Welcome, dear listeners, to the first chapter of our chilling saga, the Aylesbury Poltergeist. Tonight, we embark on a journey into the unknown, where fear lurks in the shadows and the line between reality and the supernatural blurs. This is not a tale for the faint of heart, but a true account of terror that will leave you questioning the very nature of what we perceive as reality. Poltergeists. The very word conjures images of restless spirits, malevolent entities that disturb the peace of ordinary homes. Throughout history and across cultures, poltergeists have occupied a dark corner of folklore and paranormal research. They are the noisy ghosts, the unseen forces that wreak havoc with their inexplicable and often violent actions. Unlike the spectral apparitions that float silently through the night, poltergeists make their presence known in the most unsettling ways. Loud bangs in the dead of night, objects moving on their own, and an oppressive sense of being watched by something unseen. In the quiet, unassuming town of Aylesbury, located in the heart of England, such a phenomenon would turn the lives of one family upside down in the 1970s. Aylesbury, known for its picturesque landscapes and tranquil life, seemed an unlikely setting for a story of terror. Yet, within one seemingly ordinary house, something malevolent was about to make its presence felt. The house, an unremarkable structure by all appearances, became the epicenter of a series of strange and terrifying events. The family, hoping for a peaceful life in their new home, would soon find themselves in the grip of a relentless and malevolent force. The parents, John and Mary, along with their two children, Sarah and Michael, were excited about their fresh start. Little did they know that their lives were about to be invaded by something far beyond their understanding. It began subtly at first. Odd noises that could be easily dismissed, objects slightly out of place, a feeling of unease that settled over the house as dusk fell. But soon, the incidents became harder to ignore. Furniture moved on its own, loud crashes echoed through the night, and an unseen presence seemed to stalk their every move. The atmosphere in the house grew thick with fear and apprehension, an invisible weight pressing down on the family. As the disturbances escalated, so did the fear. What could possibly explain these events? Rational explanations were sought, but none could account for the intensity and frequency of the occurrences. It became clear that they were dealing with something beyond the realm of the natural world, something malevolent and determined to make its presence known. The plight of the family did not go unnoticed. As word of their torment spread, it captured the attention of neighbors, local authorities, and soon the national media. Investigators, both skeptics and believers, descended upon the house, each hoping to uncover the truth behind the Aylesbury poltergeist. Was it the restless spirit of a former inhabitant, an angry ghost lashing out, or something even more sinister? In this chapter, we set the stage for the unfolding horror. We introduce you to the town of Aylesbury, a place of calm shattered by inexplicable fear. We meet the family, whose lives would be forever changed by the events that took place within their home. and we begin to explore the dark phenomenon of poltergeists, entities that defy our understanding and leave us questioning the nature of our world. Prepare yourself, dear listeners, for a descent into darkness. The Aylesbury poltergeist is not just a story, but a journey into fear, apprehension, and the unknown. As we peel back the layers of this haunting, remember, what you are about to hear is true. This is the introduction to our chilling saga, and it is only the beginning. Welcome to the Aylesbury poltergeist. Welcome back, dear listeners, to the next installment of our chilling saga, the Aylesbury poltergeist. In this chapter, we delve deeper into the origins of the haunting, uncovering the history of the house that became the epicenter of inexplicable terror, and introducing the family whose lives were irreversibly changed by the events that transpired within its walls. Prepare yourselves, for the shadows of the past hold dark secrets, and the present is filled with fear and apprehension. The house in Aylesbury, unremarkable in its appearance, had stood for over a century. It had seen many families come and go, each leaving behind whispers of their lives. But among these whispers, some spoke of strange occurrences, of shadows moving in the night, and unexplained noises that echoed through the halls. These stories, once dismissed as mere legends, would soon become all too real for the family that moved in during the 1970s. The previous owners had left abruptly, their departure shrouded in mystery. Neighbors recalled a family much like any other, until the day they packed up and vanished, leaving behind an empty house and unanswered questions. Rumors spread. Some said they had been driven away by financial troubles. Others whispered of a more sinister reason, an unseen force that had made their lives unbearable. Yet, no one could have predicted what would happen next. Enter John and Mary, a couple full of hope and dreams for a new beginning. John, a hard-working man with a quiet demeanor, had recently received a promotion that made the purchase of the house possible. Mary, a warm and nurturing presence, looked forward to creating a home filled with love and laughter for their children, Sarah and Michael. Sarah, a bright and curious 10-year-old, and Michael, a mischievous and energetic 7-year-old, were thrilled by the prospect of new adventures in their new home. From the moment they first laid eyes on the house, it seemed perfect. Nestled in a quiet neighborhood, surrounded by lush greenery, it promised the tranquility they sought. The children ran through the empty rooms, their laughter echoing off the walls, while John and Mary envisioned family dinners, cozy nights by the fireplace, and a future brimming with happiness. But as they settled in, subtle signs of unease began to creep into their idyllic vision. It started with small things, keys that went missing, only to be found in odd places, cold drafts in rooms where no windows were open, and the feeling of being watched. Mary, ever the rational one, dismissed these as the quirks of an old house settling. John, too, shrugged off the oddities, focused on providing for his family. However, the children were not so easily reassured. Sarah, sensitive and perceptive, began to have nightmares of a dark figure lurking in the corners of her room. Michael, usually fearless, refused to go into certain parts of the house, claiming he heard whispers that no one else could hear. Their fears, though initially dismissed, began to weave an undercurrent of tension and apprehension through the family. As the days turned into weeks, the strange occurrences grew harder to ignore. Unexplained footsteps echoed in the dead of night. Objects moved from their places, and a sense of dread seemed to permeate the very air. The once cheerful home now felt oppressive, as if the walls themselves were closing in, and an unseen presence was tightening its grip on the family. John and Mary, struggling to make sense of the escalating disturbances, reached out to their neighbors, seeking answers. It was then that the stories of the house past began to surface, the abrupt departure of the previous owners, the whispered tales of hauntings that had been passed down through the years. The history of the house, once a mere backdrop to their new beginning, now loomed large and foreboding. In this chapter, we have laid the foundation of the terror that would soon engulf the family. We have glimpsed into the history of the house, a place marked by unspoken fears and untold stories. We have met the family, hopeful and unsuspecting, and seen how the first shadows of dread began to creep into their lives. As we continue our journey, the darkness will only deepen, and the true nature of the Aylesbury poltergeist will begin to reveal itself. Stay with us, dear listeners, as we delve further into this tale of fear and mystery. The shadows are closing in, and the story is just beginning. Welcome to Chapter 1 of the Aylesbury Poltergeist. Welcome back, dear listeners, to the unfolding nightmare of the Aylesbury poltergeist. In our last chapter, we explored the history of the house and met the family whose dreams of a fresh start were slowly unraveling. Tonight, we delve deeper into the strange and unsettling occurrences that began to plague their lives. Prepare yourselves as we recount the eerie events that would mark the beginning of their descent into fear, apprehension, and the unknown. It began innocently enough, as these things often do, with small disturbances that were easy to dismiss. Mary was the first to notice. She would place her keys on the kitchen counter, only to find them later on the dining room table. She chalked it up to absent-mindedness, the result of juggling too many tasks at once. But then it started happening with other objects, books that would appear in different rooms. A vase that was always found turned slightly to the left, no matter how many times she adjusted it. John, ever the pragmatist, dismissed Mary's concerns. "It's an old house," he would say. "Things settle. Drafts move things around." He was focused on his work, on providing for his family, and he didn't have time for what he saw as trivial worries. But even he couldn't ignore the cold drafts that seemed to come from nowhere. Chilling rooms that should have been warm, or the doors that creaked open on their own, no matter how firmly they were shut. The children, too, began to feel the unease. Sarah, with her vivid imagination, often spoke of shadows that didn't belong, shapes that flitted just out of sight. She told her parents about the strange sounds she heard at night, soft whispers, as if someone were talking just out of earshot. Michael, normally fearless and full of energy, started avoiding certain parts of the house, claiming they made him feel icky. Mary tried to reassure her children, telling them that it was all in their heads, that old houses made noises, and shadows were just tricks of the light. She even convinced herself, for a time, that this was true. But the occurrences became harder to rationalize. She would clean the living room, only to find it in disarray the next morning. She began to lose sleep, waking at odd hours with the unsettling feeling that someone was watching her. One evening, as the family sat down for dinner, a loud crash echoed from the hallway. They all jumped, hearts pounding, and rushed to see what had happened. A picture frame, one that had hung securely for years, lay shattered on the floor. John, trying to maintain his calm, picked up the pieces and muttered about faulty nails and gravity. But the unease lingered. As the days turned into weeks, the disturbances grew more frequent and more bizarre. The sounds at night became louder, more insistent footsteps echoing through empty hallways, knocks on doors that, when opened, revealed no one there. Objects didn't just move, they flew across rooms, landing with a force that couldn't be explained by drafts or settling foundations. Despite the growing fear, the family clung to their rational explanations. John suggested they were all just stressed from the move, their minds playing tricks on them. Mary doubled down on her cleaning, as if restoring order to the house would somehow banish the chaos. They tried to go about their lives as normally as possible, but the tension was palpable, an invisible weight pressing down on them. One night, as they were all gathered in the living room, a heavy thud sounded from upstairs. It was followed by a series of loud bangs, as if furniture was being thrown around. John and Mary exchanged a glance, fear flickering in their eyes. John grabbed a flashlight and slowly made his way up the stairs, Mary close behind. The children huddled together on the couch, eyes wide with terror. When they reached the source of the noise, they found Sarah's room in disarray. Her bed was pushed against the wall, her toys scattered across the floor. A chill hung in the air, and the sense of an unseen presence was overwhelming. John tried to rationalize it, Perhaps an animal had gotten in. Perhaps it was a prank by the neighborhood kids. But deep down, he knew these explanations fell short. In this chapter, we've witnessed the beginning of the family's ordeal, the strange noises, the misplaced objects, the minor disturbances that slowly eroded their sense of normalcy. We've seen their attempts to explain away the inexplicable, to hold on to the rational in the face of growing fear. But as the disturbances grow more intense, it becomes clear that something far more sinister is at work. Stay with us, dear listeners, as we delve deeper into the heart of this haunting. The shadows are growing darker, the fear more palpable, and the story is far from over. Welcome to Chapter 2 of the Aylesbury Poltergeist. Welcome back, dear listeners, to the unfolding nightmare of the Aylesbury Poltergeist. In our last chapter, we recounted the subtle yet unsettling occurrences that began to plague the family's new home. Tonight, we delve deeper into the terror as the activity escalates and the presence within the house becomes impossible to ignore. Brace yourselves, for what follows is a descent into fear, apprehension, and the chilling unknown. As the days turned into weeks, the disturbances in the house grew not only in frequency, but in intensity. What started as small, easily dismissible occurrences soon evolved into something much more sinister. The family's once peaceful sanctuary had become a battleground, and the unseen force seemed determined to make its presence known in the most terrifying ways. It began with the furniture. One evening, as the family sat together in the living room, a loud scraping sound echoed through the house. They watched in horror as the heavy oak dining table in the adjoining room began to move on its own, dragging itself across the floor with a slow, deliberate motion. John, trying to maintain a semblance of control, rushed to hold it in place, but it was as if an invisible force was pushing against him. Finally, with a last shudder, the table came to a stop, leaving deep gouges in the wooden floor. The following nights brought no respite. Chairs were found overturned, books were thrown from their shelves, and lamps were knocked over with a force that shattered them upon impact. The family was at their wit's end, unable to explain or prevent the escalating chaos. They huddled together, the once comforting presence of each other now overshadowed by the growing terror. But it wasn't just the furniture. The very atmosphere of the house seemed to change. Cold spots began to appear in various rooms, icy patches of air that sent shivers down their spines, even in the height of summer. No matter how many blankets they piled on, or how high they turned up the heat, the cold persisted, an unwelcome reminder of the presence that lurked just out of sight. Then came the shadows. At first, they were fleeting, barely noticeable out of the corner of the eye. but soon they grew bolder, darker, and more defined. Sarah was the first to see them clearly. One night, as she lay in bed, she saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. Paralyzed with fear, she could only watch as it slowly faded into the darkness. She ran to her parents' room, tears streaming down her face. But by the time they arrived, there was nothing to see. The shadows seemed to take on a life of their own, moving through the house with an eerie, unnatural grace. Mary saw them in the kitchen, dark shapes flitting across the walls, while John encountered them in the basement, looming figures that seemed to watch him with malevolent intent. Even Michael, who had once dismissed his sister's fears, now spoke of seeing shadowy figures lurking in the corners of his room. As the manifestations grew more frequent, the family's fear reached a breaking point. One evening, as they gathered in the living room, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. They rushed to find Sarah's room in disarray, her bed overturned, and her belongings scattered across the floor. But what truly terrified them was the message scrawled on the wall in what appeared to be dark, dripping paint. "Get out." John and Mary knew they could no longer dismiss the occurrences as mere coincidences or tricks of the mind. The entity in their home was growing more aggressive, more malevolent. They felt its anger, its desire to drive them away. But leaving was not an easy option. This was their home, their sanctuary, and they were determined to fight for it, even as the fear gnawed at their resolve. As the nights grew darker and the cold spots more pervasive, the family began to experience more direct encounters. Apparitions, once fleeting and vague, now appeared with terrifying clarity. Mary awoke one night to see a ghostly figure standing at the foot of her bed, its eyes empty and hollow. She screamed, and the figure vanished, leaving behind an icy chill that seeped into her bones. In this chapter, we've witnessed the terrifying escalation of the poltergeist's activity. The moving furniture, the thrown objects, the cold spots, and the horrifying apparitions. The family's attempts to maintain their normalcy have been shattered, and the presence in their home has become impossible to ignore. The fear is palpable, the tension unbearable, and the true horror is only just beginning to unfold. Stay with us, dear listeners, as we continue to explore the depths of this haunting. The darkness is closing in, and the story is far from over. Welcome back, dear listeners, to the ever-deepening darkness of the Aylesbury poltergeist. In our last chapter, we recounted the terrifying escalation of the entity's activities within the family's home. Tonight, we delve into the human toll of this relentless haunting, the strain it placed on the family's relationships, their mental health, and their desperate attempts to seek outside help. Prepare yourselves, for this chapter reveals the cracks in the facade of normalcy and the growing fear that threatens to tear them apart. The continuous onslaught of inexplicable phenomena took a severe toll on the family. The once harmonious household was now a place of constant tension and fear. John, who had always been the rock of the family, found himself increasingly irritable and withdrawn. The stress of trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy at work while dealing with the chaos at home was overwhelming. His sleep was plagued by nightmares, and he often woke up in a cold sweat, the shadows of his dreams mingling with the very real fear that haunted his waking hours. Mary, too, was struggling. The nurturing warmth she had always provided for her family was now overshadowed by anxiety and exhaustion. She spent her days cleaning and rearranging, trying to impose some order on the chaos. But it was a losing battle. The feeling of being watched, the cold spots, the shadows, all of it wore her down. She began to doubt her own sanity, wondering if it was all in her head, if somehow she was to blame for the terror that had invaded their lives. The children were not immune to the stress. Sarah, once a bright and happy child, became withdrawn and fearful. Her schoolwork suffered, and she avoided spending time with friends, afraid of the shadows that seemed to follow her, even beyond the confines of their home. Michael, always energetic and mischievous, was now prone to outbursts of anger and tears, lashing out at his sister and parents in ways that were entirely out of character. The strain on their relationships was palpable. John and Mary argued more frequently, their patience with each other fraying as the tension in the house mounted. The children, sensing the discord between their parents, felt even more isolated and afraid. The once close-knit family was being torn apart by the unseen force that had invaded their lives. Desperate for answers, and unable to bear the strain alone, the family reached out for help. They started with their friends and neighbors, cautiously sharing their experiences in the hope that someone might offer a solution or at least some comfort. The responses were mixed. Some neighbors listened with sympathetic ears, while others dismissed their stories as overactive imaginations or tricks of the mind. One neighbor, Mrs. Hughes, an elderly woman with a reputation for knowing the town's history, offered a glimmer of hope. She spoke of a previous family who had lived in the house, a family that had also experienced strange occurrences. They had left abruptly, just as John and Mary's predecessors had, but not before seeking the help of a local priest. This priest, Father Thomas, had attempted to cleanse the house, though with limited success. The family had moved away soon after, and the house had remained empty for years, until John and Mary bought it. Clinging to this thread of hope, John and Mary decided to contact Father Thomas. Though skeptical, he agreed to visit the house and assess the situation. His presence brought a brief respite from the fear. He walked through each room, praying and sprinkling holy water, his voice steady and calm. For a few days, the house seemed quieter. The oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly. But it was not to last. The disturbances soon resumed, more violent and terrifying than before. as if the entity was enraged by their attempts to banish it. Feeling increasingly isolated and desperate, John and Mary turned to the broader community for help. They contacted a local paranormal investigation group, hoping that experts in the supernatural might provide answers where conventional methods had failed. The investigators arrived with an array of equipment: cameras, audio recorders, EMF detectors, ready to document and analyze the phenomena. The investigators spent several nights in the house, witnessing firsthand the terrifying events that plagued the family. They recorded objects moving on their own, captured disembodied voices on tape, and documented sudden drops in temperature. Their findings confirmed what the family already knew. They were dealing with something beyond the realm of the natural, but while the investigators could validate their experiences, they offered no solution, no way to rid the house of the malevolent presence. In this chapter, we have seen the profound impact of the haunting on the family, the strain on their relationships, the toll on their mental health, and their desperate search for help. We have witnessed their attempts to find solace and answers in their community, only to find that the fear and apprehension continue to grow. Their pleas for help answered only by the cold, unyielding presence in their home. Stay with us, dear listeners, as we delve further into the darkness. The shadows are closing in, the fear is deepening, and the true horror is only beginning to reveal itself. Welcome to Chapter 4 of the Aylesbury Poltergeist. Welcome back, dear listeners, to the harrowing tale of the Aylesbury Poltergeist. In our last chapter, we explored the devastating impact of the haunting on the family, their desperate search for help, and the validation of their fears by paranormal investigators. Tonight, we turn our attention to the world beyond the haunted house, to the growing public awareness and the media frenzy that would thrust the family's nightmare into the national spotlight. The fear and apprehension that gripped their home would soon spread, as their story became a sensation that captivated and terrified an entire nation. As the disturbances in the house continued to escalate, word of the haunting began to seep out into the local community. Neighbors whispered about the strange events, and the family's desperate attempts to find help did not go unnoticed. It wasn't long before the local newspaper, the Aylesbury Chronicle, caught wind of the story. A small article appeared on the back page, detailing the family's experiences and the involvement of paranormal investigators. It was a cautious piece, filled with skepticism, but also a hint of curiosity. The initial public reaction was mixed. Some readers dismissed the story as nonsense, the product of overactive imaginations, or a family seeking attention. But others were intrigued, and a few even claimed to have witnessed strange occurrences around the house themselves. Letters to the editor poured in, with opinions ranging from outright disbelief to offers of help from self-proclaimed psychics and ghost hunters. The family, already on edge, found the sudden attention both a burden and a potential lifeline. They hoped that increased public awareness might bring them the help they so desperately needed, but they also feared the scrutiny and skepticism that came with it. The Aylesbury Chronicle continued to follow the story, their articles growing more detailed and urgent as the disturbances intensified. Then, one fateful night, something happened that would catapult the story into the national spotlight. A television crew from a regional news station arrived to film a segment on the haunting. As they set up their cameras and interviewed the family, the unseen entity seemed to sense the increased attention and responded with unprecedented fury. Lights flickered and went out, equipment malfunctioned, and a heavy bookshelf toppled over, narrowly missing one of the crew members. The chaos was captured on film, and the footage aired the following evening. The broadcast had a dramatic effect. Viewers were captivated and horrified by the scenes of objects moving on their own, the palpable fear in the family's eyes, and the unexplained phenomena that defied rational explanation. Major newspapers and television networks quickly picked up the story, eager to delve into the mystery of the Aylesbury poltergeist. Reporters from across the country descended on the small town, their cameras and notebooks in hand, hungry for every detail. National news programs ran segments on the haunting, interviewing the family, neighbors, and even the paranormal investigators who had tried to help. The story dominated headlines, sparking debates about the nature of the supernatural and the credibility of the family's claims. Skeptics and believers alike weighed in, and the Aylesbury poltergeist became a topic of conversation in households across the nation. For the family, the attention was both a blessing and a curse. They were no longer alone in their ordeal. Offers of help poured in from paranormal experts, religious figures, and curious onlookers. But the scrutiny was relentless, and their lives became a spectacle. Reporters camped outside their home, cameras flashing at every opportunity, and the pressure of living under constant observation added to their already immense stress. Despite the chaos, the family found a few allies among the throngs of media and experts. A renowned parapsychologist, Dr. Elizabeth Harding, took a particular interest in their case. She arrived with a team of researchers, bringing sophisticated equipment and a calm, authoritative presence that provided a glimmer of hope. Dr. Harding's involvement lent credibility to the family's story, and her detailed reports on the phenomena captured the attention of even the most hardened skeptics. As the days turned into weeks, the national spotlight remained fixed on the haunted house in Aylesbury. News programs provided daily updates. Newspapers ran in-depth features, and the public's fascination only grew. The story took on a life of its own, with theories and rumors spreading like wildfire. Some claimed the house was built on cursed land. Others spoke of a restless spirit seeking vengeance, and a few even suggested that the family themselves were somehow causing the phenomena. In this chapter, we have witnessed the transformation of a personal nightmare into a national sensation. The haunting of the Aylesbury house captured the imagination and fear of an entire nation. The media frenzy bringing both hope and added pressure to the beleaguered family. The shadows of their ordeal stretched far beyond the walls of their home, touching the lives of countless strangers who followed their story with bated breath. Stay with us, dear listeners, as we continue to unravel the mysteries of this chilling tale. The public's fascination may be growing, but the true horror remains locked within the walls of that haunted house. The darkness is deepening, and the fear is spreading. Welcome to Chapter 5 of the Aylesbury Poltergeist. Welcome back, dear listeners, to the chilling saga of the Aylesbury Poltergeist. In our last chapter, we explored the national media frenzy that turned a family's personal nightmare into a public spectacle. Tonight, we delve deeper into the heart of the matter, as paranormal experts converge on the haunted house, bringing with them a mix of hope, skepticism, and fear. The lines between belief and doubt blur, and the battle to understand the unknown reaches a fever pitch. Prepare yourselves, for this chapter takes us into the realm of those who seek to uncover the truth behind the terror. As the story of the Aylesbury Poltergeist spread, it attracted the attention of paranormal experts from far and wide. Ghost hunters, parapsychologists, and other researchers of the supernatural arrived in Aylesbury, each bringing their own methods and theories. They hoped to not only help the beleaguered family, but also to document and understand the phenomena that had captured the nation's imagination. Leading the charge was Dr. Elizabeth Harding, a renowned parapsychologist with years of experience investigating hauntings and other paranormal occurrences. With her calm demeanor and scientific approach, she quickly became a central figure in the investigation. Dr. Harding and her team set up an array of equipment in the house: cameras, audio recorders, EMF detectors, and temperature sensors. They aimed to capture definitive evidence of the poltergeist activity and to understand the forces at work. Dr. Harding's methods were meticulous and systematic. She interviewed each family member extensively, gathering detailed accounts of their experiences. She conducted controlled experiments, leaving objects in specific positions and marking their locations, hoping to document any movement. Her team spent long nights in the house, observing and recording. Their presence, a blend of scientific inquiry and quiet vigilance. Alongside Dr. Harding, several ghost hunting groups arrived with a more hands-on approach. These teams, often armed with an assortment of high-tech gadgets and a keen sense of adventure, sought to provoke the entity into revealing itself. They conducted seances, used spirit boxes to attempt communication, and employed thermal imaging cameras to detect any anomalies. Their enthusiasm was palpable, but their methods often clashed with Dr. Harding's more measured approach. The public reaction to the influx of paranormal experts was as divided as the nation itself. believers saw the experts as heroes, finally bringing the tools and knowledge needed to confront the unknown. They followed every update with fervor, their imaginations fueled by the prospect of definitive proof of the supernatural. Skeptics, on the other hand, dismissed the experts as charlatans and thrill seekers, exploiting a family's suffering for their own gain. The debate raged on in newspapers, on television, and across dinner tables, with each side entrenched in their beliefs. Amidst the media frenzy, another voice emerged, that of the skeptics. Prominent among them was Dr. Richard Pierce, a psychologist and noted skeptic of paranormal claims. Dr. Pierce argued that the phenomena were the result of psychological stress and group hysteria, not supernatural forces. He pointed to the family's strain, the media attention, and the presence of eager ghost hunters as factors that could amplify normal, explainable events into something seemingly paranormal. Dr. Pierce conducted his own investigations, focusing on the psychological state of the family. He interviewed them extensively, analyzing their responses and looking for signs of suggestion or influence. His conclusions, published in several high-profile articles, suggested that the haunting was a case of mass hysteria, fueled by stress and the power of suggestion. This explanation found its own audience, providing a rational counterpoint to the growing narrative of the supernatural. The debate between believers and skeptics grew increasingly heated. Public opinion was sharply divided, with passionate arguments on both sides. Some saw the skeptics as dismissive and insensitive, unwilling to acknowledge the family's genuine terror. Others viewed the believers as gullible and easily swayed, falling for tricks and illusions rather than seeking rational explanations. As the experts continued their investigations, the family found themselves caught in the crossfire. The constant presence of researchers, journalists, and curious onlookers added to their stress, but they also felt a glimmer of hope that someone, somewhere, might provide answers. The nights were long and filled with tension. The fear in the house, a palpable, almost living presence. In the midst of the investigations, the paranormal activity showed no signs of abating. Objects continued to move, shadows flitted through the house, and the oppressive cold spots persisted. Dr. Harding's team captured numerous instances of unexplained phenomena on camera and audio, adding weight to the claims of the supernatural. Yet, for every piece of evidence, skeptics like Dr. Pierce found alternative explanations, attributing the occurrences to natural causes or human error. In this chapter, we have explored the influx of paranormal experts and the fervent public debate between believers and skeptics. The house in Aylesbury has become a battleground of ideas and theories, a focal point for the nation's fascination and fear. The search for answers continues, but the truth remains elusive, shrouded in the shadows that haunt the family's every step. Stay with us, dear listeners, as we journey further into the darkness. The battle between belief and doubt rages on, and the true nature of the Aylesbury poltergeist is yet to be revealed. Welcome to Chapter 6 of the Aylesbury Poltergeist. Welcome back, dear listeners, to the relentless nightmare of the Aylesbury poltergeist. In our last chapter, we witnessed the clash of belief and skepticism as experts and the public grappled with the horrifying events unfolding in the haunted house. Tonight, we confront the darkest moments of this tale, the most violent incidents, and the family's desperate struggle for survival as the malevolent force reaches the peak of its fury. Prepare yourselves for a journey into the heart of fear, apprehension, and ambiguity. The poltergeist's activity, which had been steadily increasing in intensity, now reached a terrifying crescendo. The family, already pushed to their limits, found themselves facing an onslaught of violent and unrelenting phenomena that threatened their very lives. It began with a night that none of them would ever forget. It was a cold, moonless night when the first of the most violent incidents occurred. The family had gathered in the living room, seeking the comfort of each other's presence. Without warning, a deafening crash echoed through the house. They rushed to the source of the noise and found the kitchen in disarray. Every cabinet door was flung open, dishes shattered on the floor, and the heavy oak table lay on its side, its legs splintered as if struck by an immense force. The family barely had time to process what they were seeing when the temperature in the room plummeted. Their breath became visible in the frigid air, and an oppressive silence fell over the house. Then, as if out of nowhere, objects began to fly through the air. Books, utensils, and furniture moved with violent force, crashing into walls and narrowly missing the family members who huddled together in terror. John tried to shield his wife and children, but the poltergeist's fury seemed unstoppable. Mary screamed as a heavy lamp was ripped from its socket and hurled across the room, narrowly missing her head. Michael and Sarah clung to each other, their faces pale with fear, as the unseen force tore through their home with relentless aggression. The violence reached a horrifying peak one night when Sarah, now too frightened to sleep alone, was staying in her parents' room. As they lay in bed, a low, guttural growl filled the air, growing louder and more menacing with each passing second. Suddenly, John was yanked from the bed by an invisible force, thrown across the room, and slammed into the wall with such force that the plaster cracked. He fell to the floor, gasping for breath, his body bruised and battered. Mary screamed for help, but her voice was drowned out by the cacophony of crashing furniture and shattering glass. The poltergeist's wrath seemed unending, each moment more terrifying than the last. The family was trapped, helpless against the malevolent entity that had invaded their lives. Desperation set in as the family realized that they could no longer endure the escalating violence. Sleep became impossible, and their days were filled with a gnawing fear of what the next night would bring. John and Mary, their nerves frayed and their spirits broken, knew they had to find a solution before it was too late. They reached out to every possible source of help. Religious figures from various denominations visited the house, performing exorcisms and blessings. But the poltergeist's activity only seemed to intensify in response. Paranormal experts continued their investigations, But their findings offered no solace, only confirming the terrifying reality the family already knew too well. The media attention, once a source of hope, now felt like a curse. Reporters and curious onlookers swarmed the house, their presence adding to the chaos and stress. The family felt like prisoners in their own home, the relentless scrutiny exacerbating their sense of isolation and fear. As the days turned into weeks, the family's desperation grew. They considered abandoning the house, but financial constraints and a deep-seated hope for a resolution kept them rooted in place. They tried everything they could think of: rituals, prayers, even consulting psychics and mediums, but nothing seemed to appease the enraged entity. One night, in a final act of desperation, John decided to confront the poltergeist directly. Armed with nothing but his determination, he called out to the spirit, demanding to know what it wanted, pleading for it to leave his family in peace. The response was immediate and brutal. The air grew thick with an oppressive energy, and a series of violent bangs reverberated through the house. John was thrown to the floor, his body racked with pain, as an unseen force pinned him down. Mary and the children could only watch in horror, unable to help. In this chapter, we have witnessed the darkest depths of the Aylesbury poltergeist's reign of terror, the most violent incidents that left the family battered, bruised, and broken. Their desperation grew as the malevolent force showed no signs of relenting, pushing them to the brink of despair. The fear and apprehension that had haunted their lives reached a zenith, leaving them questioning whether they would ever find peace. Stay with us, dear listeners, as we continue to unravel this harrowing tale. The darkness has not yet lifted, and the story is far from over. Welcome to Chapter 7 of the Aylesbury Poltergeist. Welcome back, dear listeners, to the haunting chronicle of the Aylesbury Poltergeist. In our last chapter, we witnessed the family's harrowing ordeal as they faced the relentless onslaught of the malevolent entity. Tonight, we delve into a pivotal chapter of this tale: the interventions, the desperate attempts to rid the house of the poltergeist's grip, and a glimmer of hope in the darkness. Prepare yourselves for a journey through fear, apprehension, and the uncertain paths that lead to possible salvation. As the violence and chaos within the house reached a crescendo, the family turned to every avenue of hope for deliverance. Religious figures from various faiths were summoned to the house, their prayers and rituals offered as a last line of defense against the unseen terror. Each brought their own methods: holy water, incense, sacred chants, hoping to cleanse the house of the malevolent presence that had taken root. Priests performed exorcisms, their voices strong with conviction, as they commanded the entity to leave. The air crackled with tension as prayers echoed through the halls, the family clutching on to hope that this time their pleas would be answered. But each attempt seemed to provoke the poltergeist further, its responses growing more violent and unpredictable. Blessings followed, with clergy members anointing every corner of the house with oil, invoking divine protection against the forces of darkness. Crosses and religious icons adorned every room, their presence meant to ward off evil and bring peace. Yet, the nights remained restless, the entity's wrath undiminished by the symbols of faith. Outside help continued to arrive in various forms. Paranormal investigators persisted in their efforts, refining their techniques and analyzing data gathered during their relentless vigils. Some believed they had captured fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures on camera, or recorded eerie voices in empty rooms. But despite these tantalizing clues, definitive proof of the poltergeist's nature remained elusive. Amidst the chaos, a breakthrough of sorts came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elizabeth Harding, the steadfast parapsychologist, noticed a pattern in the entity's behavior, an affinity for certain rooms and times of day. She hypothesized that the poltergeist might be drawing energy from specific environmental conditions or emotional states within the family. Dr. Harding proposed an experiment, a controlled environment where conditions could be monitored and manipulated. With the family's reluctant agreement, she set up sensors to measure electromagnetic fields, temperature fluctuations, and other environmental factors. Her team documented every occurrence meticulously, trying to uncover the hidden patterns that governed the poltergeist's actions. In a surprising turn, Dr. Harding's experiment yielded results. They observed that the poltergeist's activity seemed to correlate with periods of heightened emotional distress within the family. Instances of violence and chaos tended to occur during moments of intense fear, anger, or sadness. This insight suggested a complex relationship between the entity and the family's emotional state, opening new avenues for exploration and potential resolution. Armed with this discovery, Dr. Harding proposed a strategy focused on emotional stabilization and environmental control. The family underwent counseling sessions to manage their stress and fear, while Dr. Harding's team implemented changes to the house layout and atmosphere. They experimented with lighting, sound frequencies, and even the arrangement of furniture, aiming to disrupt the poltergeist's influence and restore a sense of calm. To everyone's astonishment, the interventions seemed to have an effect. The violent outbursts became less frequent. The objects that once flew through the air now remained still. The oppressive atmosphere that had hung over the house like a dark cloud began to lift, replaced by a tentative sense of relief. For the first time in months, the family dared to hope that they might have found a way to reclaim their lives. But the peace was fragile, a fragile ceasefire in a battle that had raged for too long. The poltergeist, though subdued, remained a constant presence in their lives, its malevolent intentions lurking in the shadows. The family lived in a state of cautious optimism, knowing that the slightest disturbance could reignite the fury that had nearly destroyed them. In this chapter, we have witnessed the family's desperate attempts to rid their home of the entity's grip, the interventions, the prayers, and the breakthrough that offered a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. The journey is far from over, and the uncertainty of what lies ahead hangs heavy in the air. The Aylesbury poltergeist has tested their strength and resilience, leaving them forever changed. Stay with us, dear listeners, as we navigate the precarious path toward resolution. The shadows may be receding, but the true nature of the entity remains shrouded in mystery. Welcome to Chapter 8 of the Aylesbury Poltergeist. We witnessed a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos, a breakthrough that offered a fragile peace to the beleaguered family. Tonight, we explore the aftermath of their ordeal, the gradual reduction in poltergeist activity, and the family's journey toward recovery as they strive to reclaim their shattered lives. Join us as we navigate through fear, apprehension, and the uncertain path that leads from darkness to possible redemption. Following the interventions led by Dr. Elizabeth Harding and her team, a noticeable shift occurred within the haunted house in Aylesbury. The once violent outbursts of poltergeist activity began to diminish, replaced by moments of eerie calm. Objects no longer flew through the air, and the oppressive atmosphere that had weighed heavily on the family lifted, if only slightly. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the family could sleep without fear of being assaulted by unseen forces in the night. The children cautiously returned to their own rooms, their beds now places of rest rather than battlegrounds of terror. John and Mary, though still haunted by memories of the horror they had endured, allowed themselves to hope that the worst was finally behind them. Dr. Harding continued her meticulous observations, monitoring the environmental conditions and the family's emotional states. Her findings suggested that the poltergeist's influence was waning, its power seemingly tied to the tumultuous emotions that had fueled its fury. The once skeptical media began to report on the reduction in activity, cautiously optimistic that the nightmare might be coming to an end. Yet, the peace was fragile, a delicate balance on the edge of uncertainty. The family lived with a constant undercurrent of fear, never quite trusting that the poltergeist had truly gone. Every creak of the house, every unexpected noise, sent shivers down their spines, reminding them of the horrors they had endured. They were survivors, scarred by their ordeal, forever changed by the malevolent force that had invaded their home. As the weeks turned into months, the family focused on rebuilding their lives. They sought solace in each other's company, finding strength in their shared struggle. John returned to work, though his mind often drifted back to the nights of terror. Mary poured herself into caring for their children, determined to shield them from the lingering shadows of the past. Neighbors and friends, who had once watched from a distance, now offered their support. Meals arrived on their doorstep, kind words were spoken in passing, and offers of help with repairs and renovations poured in. The community rallied around the family, eager to help them heal from the trauma that had gripped them for so long. For Dr. Harding and her team, the case of the Aylesbury poltergeist became a landmark study in the field of paranormal research. Their findings, published in academic journals and discussed at conferences, offered insights into the complex interplay between psychological factors and supernatural phenomena. The poltergeist, once dismissed as a figment of imagination or hysteria, became a case study that challenged established beliefs and inspired new avenues of inquiry. Yet, questions lingered in the minds of both experts and the public. What had caused the poltergeist to manifest in the first place? Was it truly gone, or merely lying dormant, waiting for an opportunity to strike again? The family, though grateful for the reprieve, knew that they would never feel entirely safe in their home again. In this chapter, we have witnessed the gradual reduction in poltergeist activity, the tentative steps toward normalcy taken by a family scarred by terror. The journey is far from over, and the specter of the Aylesbury poltergeist remains etched in their memories. The road to recovery is fraught with uncertainty, but they are survivors, bound together by their shared ordeal. Stay with us, dear listeners, as we reach the conclusion of this haunting tale. The shadows may be receding, but the echoes of fear and apprehension linger still. Welcome to Chapter 9 of the Aylesbury Poltergeist. Welcome back, dear listeners, to the conclusion of our chilling journey through the Aylesbury poltergeist. In our previous chapters, we witnessed the family's harrowing ordeal, their desperate struggle for survival against a malevolent force that defied explanation. Tonight, we explore the aftermath, the long-term effects on the family and community, and the enduring mystery that continues to haunt the minds of believers and skeptics alike. Join us as we navigate through lingering fear, apprehension, and the unanswered questions that linger in the shadows. The events that unfolded in the house on the quiet street in Aylesbury left an indelible mark on all who were touched by them. For the family at the center of the storm, the effects were profound and lasting. Though the poltergeist's violent outbursts had ceased, the scars it left behind were both physical and emotional. John and Mary struggled with insomnia and anxiety, their minds haunted by memories of the terror that had invaded their home. Michael and Sarah, though resilient, bore the weight of their experiences in their own silent ways, their innocence forever shattered by the horrors they had witnessed. The community of Aylesbury, too, was forever changed by the events. Neighbors who had once looked upon the family with curiosity now treated them with a mixture of sympathy and unease. The story of the Aylesbury poltergeist became part of local lore, whispered about in hushed tones at neighborhood gatherings and schoolyard conversations. Some believed it to be a cautionary tale, a reminder of the unseen forces that lurk in the shadows of everyday life. Others dismissed it as a hoax or a trick of the mind, unwilling to confront the possibility that something beyond their understanding had taken place. For Dr. Elizabeth Harding and her team of paranormal researchers, the case of the Aylesbury poltergeist remained a subject of fascination and debate. Their findings, though groundbreaking, raised as many questions as they answered. What had caused the poltergeist to manifest with such ferocity? Was it truly a restless spirit, trapped between worlds, or something else entirely? Theories abounded, from residual energy left behind by traumatic events to the manifestation of repressed emotions within the family. Skeptics continued to offer alternative explanations, citing psychological factors or natural phenomena as more plausible causes. Yet, for those who had witnessed the events firsthand, the flying objects, the chilling voices, the unexplained cold spots, doubt was not so easily cast aside. The Aylesbury poltergeist had defied easy explanation, leaving a lingering sense of unease in its wake. In the years that followed, the family attempted to rebuild their lives, though the specter of the poltergeist remained a shadowy presence in their thoughts. They sought solace in routine and familiarity, hoping to find some semblance of normalcy amidst the lingering fear. Their home, once a place of safety and comfort, now bore the weight of their shared trauma, its walls holding secrets that even they could not fully comprehend. As for the house itself, it stood silent and watchful, its history forever intertwined with the events that had unfolded within its walls. Some claimed to sense a lingering energy, a residual echo of the poltergeist's presence that persisted despite the passage of time. The property changed hands several times over the years, each new owner unaware of the horrors that had once taken place there. The story of the Aylesbury poltergeist continued to capture the public imagination, its legacy preserved in books, documentaries, and whispered tales passed down through generations. Believers and skeptics alike pondered the mysteries it presented, each seeking their own truth in the shadows of uncertainty. And so, dear listeners, we reach the end of our journey through the Aylesbury poltergeist, a tale of fear, apprehension, and the enduring power of the unknown. The family at the heart of this story has faced unimaginable challenges, their lives forever changed by forces beyond their control. As we bid farewell to their haunting tale, one question lingers in the air. What really happened in that house in Aylesbury? Perhaps we will never know for certain, but the echoes of their ordeal will continue to resonate in our minds, a reminder of the mysteries that lie just beyond our understanding. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, may you find comfort in the light and courage in the face of darkness. This concludes Chapter 10 and our exploration of the Aylesbury poltergeist. Dear listeners, as we come to the conclusion of our journey through the Aylesbury poltergeist, let us pause to reflect on the chilling events that unfolded in that quiet corner of England, and the enduring mysteries they have left in their wake. Tonight, we delve into the heart of fear, apprehension, and the ambiguous truths that linger in the shadows. The story of the Aylesbury poltergeist began with a series of seemingly innocuous incidents: an unexplained tapping at night, objects mysteriously misplaced. Yet, as time passed, these minor disturbances escalated into a torrent of violence and chaos. Furniture moved of its own accord, voices echoed through empty rooms, and the family found themselves trapped in a nightmare they could not escape. Key incidents, such as the violent assaults on John and the relentless barrage of flying objects, underscored the malevolent nature of the entity that had invaded their home. These were not mere tricks of the mind or fleeting apparitions. They were visceral, terrifying encounters that left lasting scars on those who witnessed them. The nature of poltergeists remains a subject of debate among experts and enthusiasts alike. Are they restless spirits seeking resolution, manifestations of repressed emotions, or something altogether beyond our current understanding? The case of the Aylesbury poltergeist offers no easy answers, but it does provide valuable insights into the complexities of paranormal phenomena. Dr. Elizabeth Harding's research highlighted the interplay between environmental factors and emotional states, suggesting that poltergeists may be influenced by both external conditions and the psychological states of those affected. This groundbreaking work challenged traditional explanations and opened new avenues for exploration in the field of parapsychology. As for the family at the center of this haunting tale, their journey did not end with the cessation of poltergeist activity. John, Mary, and their children continued to grapple with the aftermath of their ordeal, navigating the delicate balance between recovery and lingering fear. Though they have found some semblance of peace, the scars of their experiences remain etched in their memories, a constant reminder of the darkness they once faced. Dr. Harding and her team have since moved on to new investigations, their work forever shaped by the lessons learned from the Aylesbury poltergeist. Their findings have contributed to a broader understanding of paranormal phenomena, challenging skeptics and inspiring believers to reconsider the boundaries of what is possible. In the wider world, the story of the Aylesbury poltergeist has taken on a life of its own. It has been retold in books, documentaries, and countless articles, each interpretation adding layers to the mystery that surrounds it. The haunting echoes of this tale continue to captivate audiences, sparking debates and prompting reflection on the nature of belief, fear, and the unknown. And so, dear listeners, we come to the end of our journey. The story of the Aylesbury poltergeist may fade from the headlines, but its legacy endures in the hearts and minds of all who have been touched by its chilling tale. As we bid farewell to John, Mary, Dr. Harding, and the countless others who played a part in this haunting saga, let us remember that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, their truths forever shrouded in ambiguity. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of fear, apprehension, and the enigmatic forces that dwell in the shadows. Until next time, may you find solace in the light and courage in the face of the unknown. This concludes our podcast series on the Aylesbury poltergeist. And so, dear listeners, we have reached the end of our journey through the chilling tale of the Aylesbury poltergeist. From the quiet streets of Aylesbury to the depths of fear and uncertainty, we have explored the haunting experiences of a family besieged by forces beyond their understanding. As we reflect on the events that unfolded, the unexplained phenomena, the desperate attempts at intervention, and the enduring impact on all who were touched by it, we are left with more questions than answers. The nature of poltergeists remains elusive, their existence challenging our perceptions of the world around us. The story of the Aylesbury poltergeist serves as a reminder of the complexities of belief, fear, and the unexplained. It has left an indelible mark on those who witnessed its horrors, forever changing their lives and our understanding of the supernatural. To John, Mary, and their children, we send our thoughts and hopes for continued healing and peace. To Dr. Elizabeth Harding and her team, we commend their dedication and courage in the face of the unknown. And to you, our listeners, we thank you for joining us on this journey into the shadows. As we part ways, may you carry with you the lessons learned from the Aylesbury poltergeist, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the mysteries that lie just beyond our grasp. This concludes our podcast series. Until we meet again, may you find solace in the light and courage in the face of darkness. Goodbye, and stay curious.